Welcome to the Amazing Authorities Podcast, where game changers, visionaries, and category leaders share how they built their brands, platforms, and global influence. Your host is Mitch Carson, international speaker, media strategist, and creator of the Instant Authority System. If you're ready to learn from those who've done it and want to become the go-to expert in your space, you're in the right place.
Today's guest, Daryl Dittmer, lives in the mountains of Georgia. He's lived in various places, and we're going to talk today. It's a conversation and a journey for both of us in this regard. It's an unusual type of guest, usually focus on business. In today's interview, I didn't want to call it an interview, conversation, I'll say, Daryl, welcome to the show, Amazing Authorities. You've written a book called When I Stop Fighting. What prompted you to write this book?
Thanks for having me on, Mitch. It's been a lifetime of interesting stuff, I guess, to say the least. A lot of really cool experiences, a lot of challenging experiences, a lot of things that have been difficult, a lot of risk-taking, a lot of business stuff, all kinds of different things. Sobriety, freedom from addictions, and
plural.
Yeah, because we're pretty good about being addicted to anything, I suppose, right?
Yeah. Oh boy.
I'll speak for myself, but I decided to write my book because I wanted to give back, and I wanted to tell the stories, and I wanted to help people who could relate to some of the seeds that I might be able to plant.
I have to say something. I have been sober also. I no longer hide it. I kept it very quiet from my business life. We're sober about the same amount of time. That means a long time. And I have written 18 books myself. So I know a lot about the publishing industry. Never once have I written something or written about the topic of which we're both so passionate about. And that's going to change. So I thank you for doing this, because now I have to get off my tuchus and do something. So this is what we learn through other people, is like, it's a motivation. So who motivated you to share your journey and your strength and your hope?
Well, my wife, who's a normal human being,
oh boy,
in terms of how we perceive normal human beings, when I first met her, I was about 20 years into sobriety, maybe 18 years into sobriety-ish, something like that. Anyway, so I'm telling her these stories, and just sort of, here's what I used to be like, and here's some of the troubles, and here's some of the stuff inside of me that was just jumbled and messed up, and here's some of the stupid things I did. And she looked at me and she's like, I'm not seeing it. That's not you. That's not you anymore. And I think there was a little hint of, I can see that it's in there, but it's not the person you are anymore. And I said, well, remind me to write a book someday. And that was 18 years ago, or 20 maybe. And it took me about that long, up until 2 years ago, till I wrote my first book. So she was an inspiration. I have two stepsons that also are an inspiration for me, in terms of, when I leave this planet, I want to leave something behind that people can refer to and potentially learn from. So those are all my motivations.
So you've been married 20 years or longer?
Just over 20. Yeah.
Congratulations. Yeah, I was
Thank you.
married also to a normie, but I think I did what was normal. Got divorced, which is
Yeah.
It happens in the. So I see two books: When I Stopped Fighting and When You Stopped Fighting. Which was first?
The first one was When I Stopped Fighting.
And then, how much longer after did you write When You Stopped Fighting?
Well, it was interesting, because over that 18 years or however long it was, I wrote probably about 3 paragraphs. I had this little file on my computer called DOS Book from the
Oh my gosh.
little takeoff from the movie Das Boot, which I love.
Oh yeah.
Um, submarine movie,
I
but anyway,
remember it
just
well. German movie.
yeah, absolutely. So, and it still says DOS Book in my file, but so I wrote about 3 paragraphs, and we were in Massachusetts before we came to Georgia, and
Mhm.
we had a restaurant there. We had some properties. We had a few things going on from a business perspective, and I we decided that as the restaurant just sort of folded up, we couldn't get help anymore, as COVID was unfolding, that sort of thing, and it was just difficult. So we said, you know what, we're just going to pack it up. We're going to move. We're going to sell some of these things and go on our merry way. And we found a beautiful place in Georgia. So long story short, I said, I'm going to make a very concerted effort to get this book out, get it done. I started writing the first one, and I hadn't had it titled yet, but I started writing the first one. It took me about somewhere between 2 and 3 months to write the first one because I'm a maniac and I can just, you understand. We start to do something and it's like, okay, up at 3 in the morning, I got all these ideas. I'm up in the office. I got my robe on. My wife doesn't see me all day, She knows I'm up there writing and so just going and going. So 2 to 3 months to write the first one, and then after I wrote the first one and had it kind of tidied up, I just kept going and I just kept writing because there was more in there that I needed to get out. And then the second one came out, and that was another 2 to 3 months. So they were really both written at the same time, but I published one in September of 23-ish. We published the second one in September of 24.
Wow, congratulations. And
Thank
where's the
you.
third?
The third's in here, and I've got it about 80% outlined. So I just haven't started writing it yet because I know that when I do, um, I'll just rip through it, and I want to have it resonate a little bit more first, and just let it soak and simmer and all that sort of thing before I start cranking it out. So
And so what you've done is write in a series. I presume the fighting word is going to be in the third book.
I think so. I
Okay.
think so. The story behind the title is my first sponsor. His name was
Mm.
Bud, and I grew up in a Midwestern household, Protestant work ethic. My dad was a mechanic. My mom took care of us kids. It was, my dad was a tough dude. He was a Korean War vet. My mom was also very tough, and so that's from whence I came. And it was an interesting journey as a child, just sort of navigating all the madness, and we were taught to fight everything. Fight, if there's not a bone sticking out, you're not hurt. No pain, no gain. Work harder, keep going. No matter what. Get up, knock the dirt off. You're fine. All that sort of stuff. So, and I think we're taught in this world to just wrestle and fight and go. And I was talking to my sponsor, and he's watching me wrestle with my life and wrestle with problems and wrestle with people and everything else. And I'm like, Bud, help me. And he said, Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops.
It takes
And
two to fight.
Well, it takes me against me. That's when I stop fighting, and most of the fight is in here. Most of the
Yeah.
fight that I've experienced in my life is inside of me. So that's where the title came from. And so when I stop fighting and when you stop fighting, the third one might be the fighting stops. So we'll see.
And some takeaway from that, and then there's surrender or serenity to potentially. Yeah, and it's interesting you share this journey. My stepfather, I didn't really know my father, was a Marine from Korea. He fought in Korea as well. Same. My mother was hard as nails, and I get it. Both were fall down alcoholics, so I had my model. But then I had an uncle who was in WW2, he bombed the Marianas, so he was a bombardier, and and he was very much my mentor in a lot of ways of fight, 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 you effing pussy. You're a sissy from California. He was East Coast, Boston born, and was tough as nails. Same kind of mentality. And but encouraged my sobriety too. Did your parents, were they around when you got sober?
They were.
Okay.
Yes.
Did they support that?
They did very much. They basically did more or less an intervention, I guess you could call it. I don't know if that's what you call it then, but
yeah. It's an intervention.
Yeah.
Or a wake-up call.
Go talk to this dude. Go talk to this dude or get out of our life.
Okay.
And I ended up going to talk to this guy who was a drug and alcohol counselor. So he ended up putting me into treatment, and that was an extremely frightening experience. And I was just wrecked, internally, and it scared the hell out of me. And as you know, getting sober at a young age, you're not only figuring out how to do the sober thing, but you're figuring out life. You're figuring out how to live and how to get along in life and how to do things and make money and I don't know, hold jobs and learn stuff. And
date.
All that. Yeah.
I couldn't imagine. One of my biggest challenges, I remember in my last rehab, and I went through 6 of them, Daryl, in my last rehab, I said, how am I possibly going to date and have a girlfriend if I can't drink, if I can't use, that was my whole pickup line. I didn't know how to talk. It was, you want to get loaded. That's it. And was that any challenge for you socially, how to adapt and assimilate?
Oh, I was a disaster.
Okay. All right.
Disaster.
See, I thought I owned that. You, not just me.
I couldn't look people in the eye. I couldn't hold a conversation. I always felt like I was just inadequate from the perspective of comparison to other people. I always felt like I was kind of down here, and it's just a crappy feeling. But on the flip side of that, when things started to shift a little bit and things started to, I started to gain a little confidence. I started to do some things that were, abnormal. I grew up with I was Protestant, Lutheran. And so I was handed this box of, here's the stuff you have to believe. And if you don't, you're going to hell. And so, then I'm trying to, as I get straight and sober, and I'm trying to find out, okay, what resonates for me, and am I really going to hell if I don't, all that kind of stuff that just jumbled up, right? It's really difficult to sort out early. But then the sea's smooth over time, and things get better and things get easier, and then life gets to a point where it's like, holy crap, man, I didn't know it could be this good, right?
It does improve. I don't know. I think it takes another alcoholic / addict to understand how we think like that, because to the normies, they just don't get it. That's why I said before we started this discussion, I will call it a discussion / our own little meeting, if you will. This is what reboots me for the day, is to be able to have a conversation with another alcoholic. And I'm quite open about being one today. I'm no longer ashamed. I felt ashamed that I had to surrender to something that other people didn't have to surrender to. The last thing I wanted was to go to a meeting and have these 40-year-old women with cigarette breath hug me and squeeze my cheek and say, "Aren't you a cutie?" and try to get with me. I was disgusted by that, because I was so insecure, like you, couldn't look them in the eye. It's been a long journey. I didn't get this right away. It wasn't easy. How about you?
Right.
How about you?
No.
Were you a slow learner, or did you get it really fast?
No, I didn't get it really fast. My sponsor handed me a book, which I think was it probably wasn't this book, but Sermon on the Mount by Emmett Fox was a big one in
Oh, sure.
in the early program. But he handed me the 10 Commandments by Emmett Fox,
Mm.
and I read that, and I'm like, wow, and I was probably, I'm gonna say, less than a year sober, but it excited me because I thought, oh, there's a different way to look at life than what I've been taught. And it didn't mean everything got better. It didn't mean everything changed, but it meant that there was some hope that things could be different. And there was some hope that things could be, I could have some peace. And because I didn't know what that word meant. People would talk about peace and gratitude and one day at a time and live and let live and, all that sort of stuff. I'm like, what are you talking about? What is all that stuff?
Letting go.
No, yeah, I had no idea. So it was definitely a long, I would say arduous road for probably, I don't know, 10 years as I was getting my legs under me. And then
I concur.
It settled.
Yeah, I concur. And what I tell people, the metaphor is the rabbits that get this very fast. Like they're quoting the big book. They're quoting their life is great. I've got Penelope, the hot gal with chewing gum with her mouth open, coming up, walking around with the teased hair. This is 84. And I remember this particular guy who drove a red Ferrari. His name was Joe, had the shirt that was unbuttoned down here with the big gold chain. Remember, this is a different time, the 80s. This is when,
I remember.
Yeah, the Bee Gees were around, and I think the Go-Go's were the band at that time. And one of them was in the meetings back then. And this is LA where I got sober. And this guy comes up to take his 90-day chip and said, life's bitching. I've got a hot gal over here, and she had just bought the biggest bolt-ons you can imagine, like triple D's. She was going to tip over. He's like,
bolt-ons.
Yeah, bolt-ons. They were bolt-ons, man. I mean, from Dr. Goldberg. And which was a model that people used to joke about in LA at the time. It was like triple D out to here. He had that, the red Ferrari convertible, of course, and chewing gum with his mouth open. She was chewing gum with her mouth open. Like everything was great, just like a cow on a doing this. Life's great. Well, he stopped going to meetings. His business blew up, and he blew his head off. So it's very extreme. And I came in broke on all levels. I don't know about you, but I was a slow learner. You said 10 years. I would echo. I don't know exactly the number, but it took me a long time to get this. But the tortoises win the race, man. We're tortoises.
I believe that. Yeah. I believe that, Mitch. And I think, it really is about changing, and it really is about figuring out, how to take this little thing called my life back then that was just all this balled up emotion and all kinds of, just ready to explode, and expand my life to include a lot of things, but I have to. And my sponsor, Bud, used to say this all the time. He's like, man, the road gets narrower. There's only so much you can, quote unquote, get away with. You really start to narrow that road and the things that you do. But to me, that's also been the greatest measure of freedom.
Yes.
Because I'm not making choices generally that are detrimental to me, detrimental to how I operate in here. And in saying that, it means it's not detrimental to my sobriety. If I'm not doing stupid crap, I'm probably going to be okay. And I truly believe that.
Isn't that amazing how it works? You just do the right thing and things work out.
Right.
You just do the right thing. Yeah. And because I was ramming into the wall left, right, and center, the life didn't work. And until I stopped doing that stupid stuff, just you said, I've noticed two things over your shoulders. The first one is the flag in the case. What's the significance of that?
My dad, Korean
Okay.
War
I have
veteran.
my uncles just like that
Yeah.
from when he had his burial at the veterinarian vet the veteran cemetery in Long Island, New York. It's where he
Mm.
had his, and I have that flag. I was wondering if it was from there. And then on your
Mm.
other shoulder, I see a print article encased. Tell us about that.
That was an article that I did. I forget the name of the Bold Journey magazine, and that was just, some really cool questions about life and living it and getting better, and to me, sobriety and recovering and that sort of thing. And it's a cool way for me to engage with different people and as they want to talk. I love to talk, and I love to talk about real things. And when I say real things, I mean the stuff that's going on in here. And the stuff
Mm-hmm.
that's going on in here is just kind of stuff most of the time. But the stuff that's going on in here is the real stuff. And that's really that's what I engage in. And that's what I love to share with people.
That's awesome. And tell us about your business journey as a result of choosing to be sober.
I had a discussion with a lady earlier today, and
Okay.
she was asking about my business journey, and she's like, how many times have you failed? I'm like, I don't know, about 40,000. And
Love it.
I mean that,
I love the honesty, Daryl.
um, and that's completely okay because I don't look at the failures as they're just stepping stones. They're just a place to step on the way to being, successful in whatever it is that is happening. So I grew up, my dad started my journey by putting me in front of a farmer when I was 14 years old and said, "Can you put him to work?" And the farmer was like, "Yeah, I can put him to work." And I learned work ethic. I learned to bust my butt for 12, 14, even some days we did 16 hours, like from before light to just after dark. And so work ethic was instilled early, and I learned to embrace that, which was a really cool thing. So I was very blue collar. Like I said, my dad was a mechanic. Nobody in my family had graduated from college, and so I had no idea what was going on. I got sober, and I was pretty decent at basketball in high school, and as a way to skip school one day, I went to visit a college with a buddy of mine who was like this nerd, and he was just this anomaly. We're like, "Who are you? You don't drink, you don't, and we're all nut jobs."
Sure.
But he said, "You want to talk to the basketball coach?" I'm like, "Yeah, if it's a day off school, sign me up." And so I talked to the basketball coach, and it was just kind of a joke to me. But when I got sober, I was like, you know what? I'm going to call this guy back, and I'm going to see if he wants me to play basketball. And he did. And it wasn't a scholarship or anything. It was a small school, but I ended up going to school, and I went to school for criminal justice. And because I didn't have, when I got out of college, I didn't know the difference between wholesale and retail. I didn't care about finance. I didn't care about marketing. I didn't care about sales. I didn't know about any of it. I graduated from college, and I
In
went to
criminal
be
justice.
in criminal justice,
Uh,
and I went to be a carpenter again because I had done some of that. So I was framing homes. And then a guy asked me if I wanted to get involved in sales, and I'm like, no. And he asked me again, and he handed me a VHS tape. Remember those? Seemed like a long time ago.
all too well, buddy. Yes. All
But
too
anyway,
well.
the VHS tape had these stories of these people who are making tons of money. Find out it's a network marketing thing. I had no idea what that
Sure.
was at that
Sure.
time,
Yeah. Yep.
which is
MLM.
fine.
MLM.
Yeah. And so I got involved, and a couple times I did okay, and whatever. Ultimately, just crashed and burned. End up with zero money. Blah blah blah. Whatever.
As did I. I fell for it too. Amway was the first.
Yeah, exactly. This one was water filters, and
Okay,
yeah,
I did that too.
It was a fascinating journey. But
Yeah.
anyway, one of the guys was like, okay, he's not very polished, but he works hard. So he got me involved with these other guys who, it wasn't an MLM, it was actually a real company, and it was selling advertising space to industrial clients, and I sucked. I was terrible. Excuse me. So I fell flat on my face with that one. And the thing is, every time I fell flat on my face, I didn't have any money. So, it's doing side projects, it's doing decks, it's doing all kinds of stuff of things that I knew I could do.
Right.
And then I got a friend of mine from college said, hey, you want to go with us to Boston? We're working with a behavioral therapist and we're developing programs in this virtual reality sound. And people can listen to this stuff in their headphones, and it sounds like 3D. And it was actually a really cool technology. But we came out to Boston and we were delivering smoking cessation, stress management, and weight control. First thing I needed to do was get off the smoking before I could sell them. And that wouldn't have worked out very well. And so I just replaced it with chewing tobacco at that time, because that's
okay.
That's the only
I got
tool
it. I got you.
Huh? Anyway, so we went out to Boston. We made a few sales. It went okay, but we ultimately decided, and I have a bunch of wonderful friends in Boston, but that people in Boston were too stressed to do anything about their stress, and and that was fine, but that was a failure. And at that time, I didn't know anybody in Boston, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to stay. Everybody that I went out there went back. I stayed. I was in this, roach-infested, damp, dank apartment and trying to make my way, working for, doing side jobs with carpentry, and then, doing other, commercial window company I was working for, doing takeoffs on blueprints. And so just, making my way, making enough money to survive. And that was it. And finally I met a guy who was in the risk management field, commercial insurance, kind of financial deals around an insurance product. And I got involved in that, and that just started to work, and it started to go well. And he sold the company. And then I became the second largest shareholder in the new company, based on one of my mentors said, you know what, you got to have ownership if you want to make money. I said, all right. So I asked, and they gave it to me based on my sales history. And that's what I did for 20 years. And it went from, I was one of the first 7 employees and, a shareholder. And then it just got sold, and it was about 6,000 employees. So
wow. So you had a nice payday.
It's quite a journey. Yeah, it was quite a journey.
So you had a nice payday, and that allowed you to go do what you're doing. Good for you, man. You paid you paid your dues, and you had the payoff.
Yeah, and actually in the middle of that, after 20 years, I said, you know what, it's getting too corporate-y for me. I'm done. And my wife and I bought a restaurant. We did some stuff with some properties and that sort of thing. So just expanded a little bit, and it was a fun ride. I learned a ton, and very grateful for how things have worked out.
So what about today? Are you retired, or where's Daryl today? I know you're a published author twice, and the third is in your head, coming out on paper.
I am. I still consult. I do a couple of consulting gigs for clients that I had back in the old business, and I've been doing that since 2012, 2013, something like that. And so I do that, and then I actually, I write. I have a podcast. I do some social media stuff and whatever. But I swear, I'm, and my wife and I vacation a lot. So we head off to wherever. Like I said, we're coming to where you're at in the not too distant future. So we'll make sure we look you up. But anyway,
tell us about your podcast, Daryl.
My podcast is called, it's not really that creative, but it's called When I Stop Fighting the Podcast. And
my TV show in Vegas is called Amazing Authorities, where I interview.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Nice.
And mine is the Amazing Authorities podcast. So I'm about as unique as you.
Yeah. I didn't knock the cover off on the naming thing, but it really is connecting with people and talking about stories of recovering, and not necessarily, just drugs or alcohol. So many things hit people that can be really difficult for them, whether it's, trauma as a younger person, or any addiction. I mean, social media today is a horrifying addiction, in my opinion, because we're not embracing a normal state. We're zip, 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 read, and get emotionally involved, all that sort of stuff, and similar to how we could be with food, or with sex, or with gambling, or drugs, or alcohol, or anything. And so it's really just talking to people about their stories of resilience, their stories of understanding and changing, and making a new life, and those sorts of things. And it's I've had some of the most wonderful conversations with the most wonderful people. I'm blessed to be able to talk to all these great people.
Isn't that a bonus? And that's what sobriety has provided you, is having all these life experiences. And you talk about, I think my biggest challenge, other than sobriety, was dealing with a 5-year protracted divorce process. And
Mm,
that was a challenge. But if I couldn't have endured it without having a strong base of sobriety and connection behind, yeah. Where does
absolutely.
spirituality factor, or does it not, in your life?
I look at, quite honestly, and I have to do all the stuff, right? I eat and I work and I do all the, stuff that my body does. But I look at it like I'm just, this meat costume is carrying around my spirit, the real me.
Okay.
That's kind of how I perceive it. And because one of the most important things for me, because it left to its own devices, and I know it talks about this in the big book, or 12 and 12, like, hey, if you just let everything go nuts, you're going to go nuts. And if you let everything just, you know for me, I can be difficult on myself. I can try too hard. I can hurt myself. I can do all kinds of things to myself. So I've had to learn to quiet myself, and quiet my mind, and quiet my heart. I think when I was a kid, people would have said, like when I was young, they would have said, "Oh man, this kid's got, ADD or ADHD or something," and put me on some kind of drugs, because I was just a little, I was just this high energy kid, and I can still be that way. So I have to consciously calm myself, which I do through meditation, and I do breath work and those sorts of things, and I exercise, and those all feed my spirit. I look at my sobriety and my life as I have to treat my body, my mind, my heart, and my soul correctly. So, like we talked about earlier, don't do dumb stuff. I have to treat myself correctly. And if I want to have the peace and contentment and the meaning and purpose and great relationships and all of those things, and not only so that I can have them, but so that I can enjoy them, and I can be with them, while they're happening.
Makes total sense. It's not one thing, it's a collection of things. And I know that I saw a hypnotherapist years ago. I was looking for some additional help beyond the program. I'd been sober a while, I don't know, 20 years at that time. But I went to this guy that I met in a networking group, a business networking group, and he took me on. It was the first time to see the life wheel of having all of these components in balance. Is your relationship, spirituality, health, mental health, business, finances. Are they there? Do you have say all of these elements, and it's all got to work, as a big chain. And if you're missing a link, the chain doesn't go around well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I've absolutely found that when I'm not treating my body well, and if I'm I used to love jelly beans. I would eat jelly beans at every opportunity.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of me. And I found out through getting sick and sick in the intestinal region, like not cool, man. That combined with, business stress and all the things that can kind of get you and pile up on you and that sort of thing. They piled up on me several times. And so, we learn, and I had to learn over time that there are things, and I like to put it this way. I've learned more about what I don't want in my life than what I do want in my life. And if I can jettison some of those things that I know are destructive for me, all that's left is the good stuff, and it's really it's seeking to understand what those things are that might not be helping my growth in all areas of life.
No, I love it. That's a great recipe for success. And now, do you cover that in your books? Do you talk about some of? Okay,
I do, absolutely. My first book is more or less my story, and it kind of starts from the beginning. Here's me, the addiction and dysfunction and recovery and taking risks and business stuff and stories. And a lot of people have said, well, it made me laugh and it made me cry. So I guess it worked. And the second book is more about we all want the same stuff. I really believe we all want peace and contentment, when we all want great relationships, and we all want meaning and purpose, and we all want financial stability, and we want contentment, those sorts of things. But how are we getting there? And that's the big question. What are we choosing to do to get there? And some of the things we choose to do, as you and I well know, we were looking for that stuff. But if you're digging it out of a bottle or a pipe or whatever it is, you're not going to find it. And
no,
if I'm looking for it on social media, I'm not going to find it. The only place it is in here. And so how do I go in here and discover what life really is about? And that's really what my second book is about.
that's awesome. And I'm looking forward to hearing about the third, because the sequence is there. And I think we've all got that. I work with authors in publicity. That's my work. And what I always share with my clients is there's more than one book, like the one hit wonder in music. No, you got to have an album here to leave a lasting legacy, and you all have it. It just takes a little bit more work. And it's, Thomas Edison said it's 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. You got to put the elbow grease in order to have the output. And there's a real legacy there with books. I'm a big fan of books. Big fan. It's right up my alley. We grew up with that. I like the physical feel of them, and newspapers, if I can find them anymore. But it's great stuff, Daryl. I have to say thank you. This ticked my box for the day to talk about recovery, talk about moving forward. And I'm going to read the transcript after, which is great. And it'll detail of what you talked about is getting rid of the bad. Don't allow it into your life, essentially. And then what's left over is the positive nuggets that will keep us going. Yeah. And why have sand that's going to slow us down with these people? Right. Great stuff. Great contribution. And
thank you.
Where do they go? They can go to Amazon for your books, or do they go to DarylDittmer.com?
Amazon, you can find my books. Just type in either When I Stop Fighting or When You Stop Fighting, and they're both there. And my books can also, there's links to my book on my website, which is DarylDittmer.com, DarylDittmer.com. And I have journals on my website as well, because I'm just a big believer in writing, and I'm not. One of the things I did when I was a kid was I would write, and soon after I got sober, just to dump all the stuff out of me, and dump all the scary stuff out of me. So I provide journals on my website as well, which I think can be really helpful for people.
Well, those are great recipes for success, is journaling about it. I mean, we learned that in sobriety. It's like, write about it, put it in pen and paper. Very simple. It works. Right. This isn't a text thing. Write it. it leaves a.
There's something healing about that,
Yes.
about writing, right? Yeah,
It is therapy.
absolutely.
It's therapeutic, and we all need
Yeah.
that to clean house. So that's great. Daryl, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Mitch. Love being on.
Thanks for tuning in to the Amazing Authorities Podcast. If today's episode inspired you, take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps more experts like you rise to the top. For behind-the-scenes access and free resources to boost your authority, head to mitchcarson.com. Until next time, stay amazing.